showing out, making moves, no doubt. FFA pride, it's what we're all about. From classroom dreams to real world flair, we got the stories you won't find anywhere. Beyond the jacket where the stories unfold, voices of the future, fearless and bold. Tune in now, let the passion ignite. It's more than a jacket, it's a way of life. Beyond the jacket where passion meets purpose.
Hey listeners, welcome back to the Beyond the Jacket podcast. We're super excited to have you joining us again on this lovely Friday. We have an absolute favorite as a guest today, Miss Saydee Longhurst. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paige. I'm excited to be here and talk a little bit about my FFA experience and love of agriculture. I grew up on a first-generation farm in southeastern Idaho. My parents started farming full-time the year I was born in 2000. Neither of them really grew up in agriculture, but it'd be a shame if they weren't farmers because dirt is just in their DNA. And I was lucky enough to then grow up on a farm because of them chasing their dreams. Grew up moving pipe, driving tractors, baling hay, all the fun things. And then in high school, I realized that there was a class called Intro to Ag, and my mom was like, you should probably take that since we're farmers. And I discovered this thing called FFA and just really fell in love with all the opportunities FFA provided leadership-wise, and connections that I was able to make across the state with kids from other schools. And then that led me to serve as the Idaho FFA State President full-time for a year after I graduated from high school, and I discovered agricultural education as a career path. That led me to Utah State University, where I studied agricultural education, student taught at Rigby High School in Idaho, and then also in Milan, Italy. And when I was finishing up that, I wasn't quite done with ag ed, and my professors asked me to stay and get my master's degree in agricultural extension and education, where I focused on research of social media being used by agriculture teachers across the country. And now currently I'm back home on our farm finally after 6 years of school, getting to showcase and highlight what I get to do living on a full-time farm, working alongside the whole family.
Wow, that's awesome. Teaching in Italy? Holy cow, girl. That's an awesome thing. And I don't think I even realized that when we asked you to come on the show. So that'll be interesting to jump into. And 6 years of school, you're a saint. I don't know if I could last that long. I'm currently at the University of Florida getting my AEC Ag Ed and Communications degree. So kind of on a similar path, if you will. Through working on your family's farm, growing up in agriculture, finding your love in the blue jacket, what is some of like your earliest memories in agriculture that are still very fond for you?
The one that immediately comes to mind is thinking about when I was little, probably 4 or 5, I would ride in my booster seat with my dad in his front seat, and we'd go check to make sure all of the irrigation pumps were going, all of the pivots and pipe, and we would listen to Alan Jackson's Little Bitty at full volume, and we would drive around with the windows down in the evenings, and I think that's when I really started to understand the lifestyle that we get to live is a little bit different than what some folks get to have. And I never take that for granted because I think watching my parents work really hard to be able to build up what our farm is has allowed me to just really appreciate, and how I talk about agriculture is maybe a little bit different than folks who have no idea about what agriculture is, and maybe the generational farms that you're maybe used to seeing if you've been in the industry for a long time. One of the unique things, my dad only has a 9th grade education, didn't even graduate from high school, and he's really been able to find his love and passion in farming, and he's just really, really good at it. And so seeing that and seeing his love definitely transferred over to me just from him taking me along and having me be a part of the whole operation. Just memories all along the way growing up. And obviously, working as a family, there's always good and bad, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Absolutely. No, I grew up on my family's cattle ranch in South Florida, and can relate directly to the riding around, listening to the songs, and you don't quite realize it then that it's kind of creating a passion for this industry, and you might not know all the ins and outs as a little girl sitting on the console of your granddaddy's truck that he called the saddle. That's like one of my favorite memories.
I love
But
it.
you don't realize how much that is teaching you through that
Mhm.
journey. And like now, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't want to work in another industry besides agriculture because of its being so important to so many people, and of course just the love of it, you know.
Yeah.
You were a state officer, went all your years in FFA, starting from, hey mom, I think I'm going to do this, to then running a state association. What was that like?
When I think back on that, I'm still just kind of in shock how I was able to be so blessed to have that experience. The chapter that I was involved with isn't super involved. I can remember one time we pulled up to state convention and my advisors were like, okay, who's participating in floriculture? And just pulled 4 of us off the bus and threw us into the competition. And that kind of sums up my involvement and how my understanding of an FFA chapter worked. But as a freshman in high school, I remember going to state convention. We were sitting in this big auditorium and people were throwing beach balls around and Craig Morgan's International Harvester was playing and everyone's singing along. And I realized, wow, like I actually am around other people that care about agriculture like I do. I grew up in a rural area, but not a lot of people have agriculture as their main source of work or income. And so I always felt a little bit different. But being at that state convention, I realized, oh, this is a place for me. And that just propelled me to participate all 4 years and look for ways that I could become more involved. I had an SAE project that allowed me to really see opportunities FFA has you think about when it comes to running a business and the career opportunities after high school. But my senior year, I decided, okay, I'm going to try this state officer thing. I have no idea what it looks like or what they totally do the whole year. I knew I had seen them at state convention on stage, kind of conducting those sessions. And I'd heard about chapter visits of what they do. And I said, okay, I'm going to throw my hat in. But I didn't really have anyone to look to. We didn't even have someone run for like 30 years from our chapter. And so my mom was a really big cheerleader and helper for me for setting up just interviews to really get myself confident and comfortable talking about myself and my story in agriculture. And I think that really propelled and helped me through the process of running for state office. In Idaho, it's a 4-day interview process to be able to be hopefully elected. And that I've completed that, made it through the first round, which I was totally shocked about. Didn't think that would happen. And I was like, oh, okay, I actually have a chance. Saturday morning came around. I'm standing in line. They start playing the Chicago Bulls theme song. I'd never even watched a state officer election before. They go through all the names and I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't make it. You know, it was a good run. And then they announced my name as state president and I was just in shock. The current president had to grab me and run me on stage. And from there, I just never took for granted the opportunity I had to serve the Idaho FFA Association for a year. And really get to know our students and represent Idaho agriculture at a national stage. And I just think that really propelled me and honed me in on being able to talk about my personal experience and story in agriculture because of the opportunities that you get as a state officer, but also being able to interact with so many FFA members from around our state and the country. And I just think that really totally was wrapped a bow on my entire FFA experience and was just really the cherry on top. And I'm forever really blessed and grateful that I was able to be selected for that opportunity.
Absolutely. I remember when I ran for state office, the hardest thing was talking about yourself. Like,
yes.
You knew the organization and you knew what had built you into who you were, but I don't know. That was just something I struggled with, man. That personal interview, we did our interviews ahead of time of our state convention, and then they slated certain candidates out of the interviewees, and then the last session at state convention, they announced your names, kind of like you were saying,
Yep.
in front of everyone, and you knew or you didn't know type of situation. But they always said, like, if you could make it through a state officer screening in any state across the nation, you could apply for any job, go on any interview ever, and be suited to do well by far. And at that point, you're like, there's no way. And then you go through it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I am invincible. I can do anything. I mean, not to that extent, but definitely a tedious process that if any student goes through it, no matter if you get to be the next state president like Saydee, or maybe you didn't get elected like me, it's a huge process and a really big deal to be a part of.
Yeah.
On the podcast, we focus a lot on SAEs, Saydee. That's really, when we were talking to those students, we deep dive into those experiences. What was your SAE? Has it grown past high school? Did it stop when your Blue Jacket journey stopped? What was your SAE?
So my SAE is actually still in operation, which I think is really exciting and something that I think is one of my biggest takeaways from my experience in the Blue Jacket. It started in between my freshman and sophomore year. So I had a couple horses. We grow alfalfa. That's our main crop that we do. My dad does large 1-ton bales, 3x4 bales. And I had been feeding those to my horse, and I got tired of it because they just made a mess and it was hard to handle. And I was like, you know what? I want to do some little bales. So I borrowed a little baler from one of our friends, baled up some little bales right behind our house. We have a big alfalfa field. Hand loaded those, put them by my horse, and I ended up selling out that summer because word got out that I had hay bales that I didn't even have for sale, but people needed them. And I realized obviously that was a need in our area. And so next year I made plans to do the same thing, and it just morphed into this SAE, which is now called Cleo's Cuttings. My middle name is Cleo, after my great grandma. She grew up on an alfalfa farm in Canada. So all of that, wholesome legacy there. But it just continued to grow through high school, got bigger and bigger, and, produced more bales each year. In my senior year of high school, I got a piece of equipment called the Bale Baron. So it takes 18 individual small bales and puts them into one large bundle, an 18 bale package. For size reference, one fits in the back of a regular size pickup bed. And that really set me apart in our area for being able to market my hay specifically. And so that just continued on and has continued to grow. It actually helped me pay for my undergraduate degree at Utah State, which was super helpful. So I was able to graduate debt-free. So that was really, really nice. And because where I chose to go to school in Utah, only about a couple hours away, so I was able to still run that on the weekends. And that's not something I ever thought or foresaw happening as a little freshman in high school that just didn't want to feed big bales. But it really has allowed me to maximize, number one, my business skills, understanding agriculture and being able to talk about a product specifically in agriculture, and something that has continued to bring me income now, that I never would have saw. And I've been out of high school now for 8 years. And just because of an SAE project, that's really, I think, something that is not talked about enough when it comes to being involved with FFA. Those SAE projects can really take you so far because it's so individualized, and really allows you to just immerse yourself in different sectors of the agriculture industry.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree, Saydee. Like, SAEs are kind of where you find your niche, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the creative freedom of whatever you find interesting, you can go down that path. And I think it's also quite unique that your SAE is still running. My SAE is still running, the podcast right here in the now. But you see a lot of kids that kind of end that when high school ends. They took off their Blue Jacket the last time, and that SAE ends too. And when you get to talk to certain students that it becomes a business and it funded your undergrad, that's amazing. And they don't think of the different benefits of an SAE project, because that sophomore girl like me and you was like, heck, I see a problem, let's go solve it. And then, oh my gosh, we're into college or even into our career like you are, and it's like, wow, that little inconvenience when I was in high school has become a part of my career career or
Yeah.
what I went to school for.
Mhm.
And you don't realize that you planted that seed and now you're like, holy cow, like where things have gone. And
For
I
sure.
have to sit and reflect on that from time to time, you know. My love affair with my SAE was ag communications, and it's my understanding that you went to school for that. And you have quite a large following online as far as telling your story. How did that start?
Yeah. So funny enough, so my undergrad is in agricultural education with hopes to become an ag teacher. And really, I love that world. I think I foresee myself going to the classroom at some point right now. For me, I just haven't found the right program that I would want to teach at that's close to where my family farm is. But during my undergraduate degree, when I was student teaching at Rigby High School, go Trojans, they are like the epitome when we're talking about SAEs. They do such a great job setting students up for finishing high school and seeing the benefits of having an SAE project. Whether they continue it or not, they understand how much that impacted their growth in an ag program. But while I was there, I started realizing like we need to be documenting and sharing what these teachers are doing, like online. Like people need to know about this. And I started documenting my student teaching experience on TikTok through my time as the state president, and then through my other years in college. I've always just been a documenter. That's what I've loved to do. I just love posting and sharing things. My mom and I are both early adopters of all things social media. So it's just something that's always just come naturally to me. But as I was watching this, as I was student teaching, I was getting comments on TikTok like, oh, I had no idea you could do this as a job, or I had no idea that the student teaching experience happened. And that really got bigger when I went to Milan, Italy, which is a unique program at Utah State where they place you in a career and technical education school there. So CTE, for anybody that's familiar, that's what ag programs fall under. I think it's one of the greatest things to ever grace American education. But in Italy, students pick specialized high schools that they go to. And so I was placed at an agricultural high school in Milan. And one of the reasons I was placed at this school is they actually have an alfalfa farm. So we were comparing alfalfa production in Idaho compared to Italy. And I was sharing all of this online, and people were so interested that, first of all, agriculture is global. And if you're not involved in agriculture, like you can't blame people for not realizing like, yeah, everybody eats, everybody, has to have farms somewhere. And so showing that to the folks back home was really something that I just loved and thrived off of. And then showing that we are actually teaching students while they're in high school about the careers that they can have after they finish and get their degree, whether they go directly into the industry or go on and get further education. We as ag teachers have that opportunity. So during all of this time, I'm mentioning it to my professors and talking with them, and they're like, why don't you just come back to school and you can get your master's and do some research? And I was like, yeah, actually, I would like to do that. And they were kind enough. They offered me an assistantship, paid me to get that. And that was just something I never had even dreamed of or thought about. And so that was really cool. But during my time getting my master's degree, my thesis is on social media usage by ag teachers. So I looked at if ag teachers are using social media, how they're using it to showcase different content within the 3-circle model. So that classroom, FFA, and SAE experience that students have when they're in a program. I looked at that. And then I also took a social media analytics class, which just totally blew my mind. And I'm using now still today for my own personal use and for some side social media accounts that I run. But it's called the Metadata Content Library, and you can search key terms to pull up posts made on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. So I looked up the 3-circle model words. So agriculture classroom, FFA and supervised agricultural experience, and was able to pull posts that were tagged with those specific search words. And so being able to see, obviously, audience sentiment, so how people were reacting to these posts that were shared online, whether it was positive, negative, and neutral, and how many posts were shared for each of those search terms. And so now I've been able to actually present that to several different ag teacher groups and workshops to show, hey, like, here's an opportunity for you as an ag teacher to, number one, get students in your classroom because they're seeing you on TikTok or Instagram showing, cool things that you're doing in your classroom, and to show, hey, I actually, as a student, may want to go into this as a career because of how you're showing what you're doing in the classroom. That was really a long, wordy explanation, but something that I had no idea or foresaw seeing because of my experience with an ag program. Because of social media, we can now showcase this and hit a whole bigger audience of what it is that an agriculture program provides for students and community members and ag teachers.
Absolutely. No, I get to take that class next semester, and I'm so dang excited. I can't control myself, especially by working in social media and ag communications and being able to apply that, kind of like you were saying, and being able to understand that 3-circle model and promote it. That's kind of why the podcast was born in the first place, and obviously more specified on the SAE areas, just because, in my personal opinion, I think in times that's overlooked, and it's one of the most creative parts of that 3-circle model. And I think it's quite impressive that your entire thesis was done on that research. And shout it out, girl, because I bet it's more people need to hear it, But that being said, you're in the early stages of your career. Obviously, you said prior to this that you might go into the classroom, you might continue to farm, you're not kind of sure where you're going. And I think that's the same for a lot of our listeners. Do you have a piece of advice that you would give someone that's kind of in your shoes or wants to go down the same path that you would, Saydee?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I constantly have to tell myself, because I kind of question not going into the classroom directly after I've spent 6 years really looking at that. But for me right now, to almost just heal my soul a little bit from being in a school setting, was to come back and work on our farm. And something unique that I've been able to do is capture that and share it on social media that I didn't foresee happening. People seem to like what I'm sharing, which I'm just constantly shocked and humbled by, because I'm just a little farm gal from Idaho. But my advice would be is to just feel good about where you're at and where you're going, having goals, and just being able to just take in and appreciate where the moment that you are at in life. When I was at school, I was all in for that. My personality is to be all in for whatever I'm doing. And so for school, I was all in. Now I'm all in on being involved in our community and farm. Been able to work with our local school district and run their social media accounts because of the one little social media analytics class that I took in my master's degree. That other than that, I really have no professional training in running social media accounts, but I've taught myself and taken the time to learn a skill. And then put myself out there and shown like, hey, I can do a good job at this. So my advice would be is if you want to do something, go after it. Teach yourself. You don't have to have a degree for you to be able to do something or be involved in something. Just learn a skill and show up and be your best in whatever it is that you want to be involved with.
Absolutely. That diligence and dedication towards your trade is something that I think every student, every college student, every adult even needs to hear from time to time. I know I need a quick reminder every once in a while. Saydee, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit deeper and getting a look inside of your Blue Jacket journey. Listeners, thank you for tuning in with us again. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow both Beyond the Jacket and Saydee online. See you next Friday.